So when we talk about performance management, the main focus is to be able to understand what happens in the organization. For you as an employee, what will management be able to do to ensure that you increase your performance at the end of the day? Remember, the main focus, every organization has an objective of ensuring that they perform better. And that is why we have competition in place. So organizations will come up with strategies, will come up with plans on how they are going to increase their performance, either internally within the various departments or externally when we look at competition in the wider context. So performance management is an ongoing process of communicating between a supervisor and an employee that occurs throughout the year in support of accomplishing the strategic objectives of the organization. So remember, every organization that exists today has a strategy in place. And these strategies are normally long-term strategies. For example, if the organization wants to expand their scope in terms of market, they will have a strategy, maybe a 1, 2, or 3, or even 5-year strategy, and ways on how they are going to implement some of this strategy. So strategies normally are plans or ploys that organization will use to be able to capitalize on their competitiveness when it comes to the performance. So it is therefore very important to understand and to communicate some of these strategies to the employees. And that is why when you look at the organization, you will find that most organizations have a certain structure in place. And the focus of this structure is to create some level of accountability and also some level of chain of command, where you know you're supposed to report to who and at what time. So this is one way of trying to increase the performance. And remember, we are saying this is a communication process, which is always there. And the main focus is to be able to increase your objective and to have a competitive edge when it comes to the various activities within the organization. So the communication process includes clarifying expectation, setting objectives, identifying goals, providing feedback, and also reviewing results. So remember, communication is very critical. And we have organizations that have a department that is responsible for communicating various activities within the organization. So we have the overall communication department, and within every department, we also have a communication branch that focuses on trying to build a good flow when it comes to communication, so that every employee and the management will be on one page of ensuring that they are able to get results at the end of the day. So the essence of communication, therefore, is to ensure that you are able to clarify expectation. What is your expectation at the end of the day? So every year, at the beginning of every year, organizations normally set expectations, what they want to achieve, what they expect at the end of that particular year. For example, we are in the year 2024. In January, most organizations were able to clarify their expectation or their theme for that year. So that in this year, this is what we expect, and this is what we are going to do. We are going to set objectives. And once we set those objectives, we will be able to understand or identify goals that match those objectives. Then we will have avenues where employees and the management will be able to provide feedback. And at the end of it all, they will be able to review results. So what are the basic principles of effective performance management? What are the principles of effective performance management? One of the principles that is very critical is the principle of transparency. The principle of transparency. When we talk about transparency, we are talking about ensuring that every communication that happens or any activity that happens in that organization is communicated in a more transparent way so that employees don't feel that they are left behind in major decisions within the organization. And the main focus of transparency is to be able to increase or improve the performance, and at the same time to come up with ways on how they will be able to measure some of this performance. So transparency is very critical, and the employees must be incorporated to ensure that every employee knows the values that they are supposed to follow, and these values will form the basis of being transparent in every operation that I do. Then the other principle is the principle of employee development and empowerment. Remember, it is a collective responsibility that employees must be able to participate in issues development. And remember, development is where employees are normally taken even for trainings on how they are going to improve their performance. We have bigger organizations that also have a training branch where employees are supposed to have a refresher course. Every year they must attend that refresher course. And this is the way of trying to build their capability, trying to build their capacity, and also trying to improve and empower those employees so that once you get empowered, you can be able to make decisions that will be in line with the organization in terms of objectives. Then the other principle is values. Every organization has values, core values. For example, there is this core value called professionalism. You find most organizations talk about being professional in what you do. Some organization will talk about maybe values like integrity as a value. So that once you join that organization, you already know the values that you need to incorporate. And these values are the ones that will be a driving force for you and will provide that guide that you need to follow at the end of the day. So values are very important, and values normally will dictate your character in that organization. For example, there is this supermarket that used to be a long time ago. It was called Kuala. When you hear somebody talk about Kuala, what comes into your mind? Their values were very bad. And once you talk about Kuala, people would automatically look at something that is fake. So values are very important. And people are the ones who will come up with those values, will be the ones who will implement those values. Because remember, when we talk about resources, we talk about human capital. And the human capital is the driving force of most organizations. Then the other principle is the principle of favorable work environment. You need to create a conducive environment for your employees, and this environment will create that culture where employees will be able to work and will also improve in terms of their morale. So once they understand their values, they understand their mission and vision, they will be able to work towards achieving this. So work environment is very, very important. And employees or employers need to create that conducive environment so that at the end of the day, people feel valued and they will be able to work towards achieving the organization goals. Then you also have the external environment. This is the environment that is outside the organization. And this environment normally will affect the organization in a very great way. So organizations need to adapt to what is happening in the external environment. Remember, a good example is when you are dealing with technology. Remember, this is the new reality and we have to accept it. So as an organization, you need to look at what is happening outside so that you use what is happening outside to embrace what is happening within the organization. Remember, external environment will have a lot of influence in the internal business environment. For example, look at the Gen Z nowadays. They have come up with different ways of doing things. And it is really affecting, or it is really having an impact in what is happening. And their main focus is that they have embraced technology, and technology is working for them in a good way. And other examples, for example, political instability will affect the organization, whether you like it or not. And that is why it is always not recommended for organizations to be part and parcel of a particular political formation. Look at case of Safaricom. There was a time they had issues where they were told that they were supporting a particular candidate in the 2022 elections. And this really affected their performance in terms of their sales. Another good company is which one? Which one can you think of that decided to support Citizen? Citizen is another one. There was a time they were saying they were supporting a particular formation of political party, and they were really criticized on the internet, and many other examples. So it is always important for companies to be very careful when they are dealing with the external environment and what the external environment is influencing. For example, we are looking at the global market space where most companies are trying to copy what is happening in other jurisdictions, in other countries. For example, nowadays we have the LGBTQ. So as an organization, you need to also be very careful when you try to incorporate some of these issues. For example, if you are an institution that is let's say, a church institution, what are your values in terms of some of these policies that are global policies? And how then are you going to ensure that at the end of the day, you bring those policies on board? And you also need to be very careful in the suggestions that you give, because people will be watching you. And remember, different countries have different policies. You need to be in line with what the policies say. And in Kenya, the main policy that we have is the Kenyan Constitution 2010 that has everything that is required. So in the event you are not sure of something, you will always look at the Constitution. For human resource practitioners like you, you will look at the Labor Act, the Employee Labor Act, or the International Labor Act, and what the Act says, or the labor laws, So what are the characteristics of effective performance management? Number one is that it must be clear. The goals should be very clear. Make sure you have clear and precise goals that you lay so that employees will be able to understand them. The employees will be able to relate with them, and the employees will find it very easy to implement them. So make sure they are very, very clear. The goals are very clear. Then you're also looking at evaluation. You need to ensure that you will be able to evaluate some of these performance management that you want to bring on board. Either evaluate as an individual, as a team, or depending on your department. So evaluation will help you to be able to rate yourself at the end of the day. Then cooperation, but not control. So the essence of performance management is to be able to cooperate, not to control. So it is very important to come up with a system where we will have employee consensus in different aspects of the organization. Therefore, they will be able to work collectively to be able to achieve the goal and avoid cases of control or coercion, because once you try to control employees, they will always have some kind of resistance to what you want to implement or to bring on board. Then self-management teams, you need to come up with teams, either cross-functional teams that will self-manage themselves for purposes of increasing their performance. These teams will create a sense of responsibility and also develop what is called a spirit de corps, where you are committed to perform that responsibility in a more collective way and try your level best to understand your weaknesses and your strength and try to bridge that gap that is there. Then we also have leadership development. So performance also, you will have a leadership potential people who you feel have the ability to lead others. So once you develop that, then it means you will have people who have the passion to ensure that the organization will perform better. Therefore, in different departments, you can nominate somebody who is going to act as a team member or as a leader in that particular context. Then we have systems of feedback. Feedback is very important. And every department has an avenue where you can give your feedback, either anonymously or they have structures in place where you can just give your feedback and there will be no discrimination. So feedback will help you to grow and understand possible areas that you need to improve. And that is why when you look at these big firms, they really value feedback. And they have a whole team that will always analyze some of these feedbacks and try to give possible solutions or recommendations that will play a great deal in improving the performance of the organization. And nowadays, because of technology, this has been made very easy, where you find we have a team that is called social media team, or the communications department. Under the communication department, we have a social media team. And the work of this team is to look at all the social media platforms or handles that the organization has and try to understand the various feedbacks that they are getting from the customers. So this feedback will be very, very important in improving or ensuring that we have a better performance in the organization. So the performance management cycle. So this cycle depends or varies in a year to year based on the changing objective. So the cycle is not a uniform cycle. It will always change based on your objective as an organization. Remember, every year your objective will change. Maybe last year your objective was to ensure you come up with the strategies that will help the organization to be sustainable in the future. This year, your objective is to ensure that we have mental awareness and employees are taken through therapy and how to increase their mental awareness. Maybe next year we'll have another thing. Maybe your focus will be customer satisfaction for sustainable economic development of the organization. And based on those objectives or themes, they will form the basis of your performance management. Then, what is the cycle? We have planning. You have to plan. So planning is a pre-activity that you have to do before. Is a pre-activity that you have to do before the actual activity. Then checking in. Checking in is all about implementing. You are trying to implement those objectives as you go by. Then review. Once you implement and you look at how those objectives are going, you'll be able to review. The essence of reviewing is basically to monitor and check what is happening, whether what you implemented is effective or not. So you have an opportunity to read that and be able to understand what I'm talking about. So the other thing I'm going to talk about today is reward management. Reward management. So reward management is all about coming up with various initiatives or strategies that will help the organization either to increase the performance of employees or the organization's performance at large. So the organization will come up with a system that will help in rewarding both the employees who perform exemplary well or reward the overall employees so that at the end of the day, they will be able to increase their morale. So reward management will help to attract, retain, and engage people upon which the business relies. So the main focus of reward management is to be able to attract more people to join the organization or to attract the already existing employees to work so hard so that at the end of the day, they'll be able to get the rewards. They will also help to retain and engage more people. We have different organizations that have good structures in place. And at the end of every year, they will always award the best employee of the year, the best department of the year, and things like that. And this is very common when it comes to the banking sector, where remember, the banking sector is very competitive. And you need to have your own niche as an organization so that you become better than the other one. For example, when you look at Equity, when Equity started operating some years ago, they came up with the penetration strategy. And their main focus was to be able to incorporate everybody. And their main target was the people who are at the lower level of the organization, the lower level of life. And that is why their slogan is a member. Everybody is a member, regardless of your class, regardless of your ethnicity and things like that. So that was their strategy, and their strategy really bared a lot of fruits. And remember, when you come up with this strategy, first and foremost, you need to incorporate your employees. Remember, the employees are the driving force. And once you put your employees and you give them various rewards based on their performance, they will always ensure that they work hard and their target is to get the rewards at the end of the day. So I was talking about the banking sector where they have ways on how they normally reward their employees. They can even take you to a holiday, maybe in Zanzibar or even in Mombasa or other parts of the world. They can come up with maybe with bonuses where every employee is given a bonus at the end of the year. You are given a double salary, normally referred to as the 13th check, where at the end of the year, they give you double salary. Then we have other forms of reward management, promotions, recognition, and things like that. So reward management is concerned with the strategy, policies, and processes required to ensure that the value of people and the contribution they make to achieve organization's department and team goal is recognized and rewarded. Imagine if you work in an organization where they do not have structures of reward and you worked there for more than 10 years. But when you look at your progression as an individual, there is no progression. The way you came in year 1 is the same way you are in year 10. What will happen in such scenario? You feel demotivated. You feel that you are not valued in that organization, and you'll always give the bare minimum. The bare minimum. So it is always important for organizations to come up with strategies, to come up with policies and processes that will help people to be incorporated in their contribution. And at the end of the day, they will be able to get recognition. A very common type of reward is where organizations give their employees some shopping vouchers. Maybe you can be given a shopping voucher for Naivas supermarket, where you go do your shopping, maybe for 20,000 and things like that, for purposes of building that confidence, building the morale of employees. And this makes employees feel that the organization really values them. Then you need to have a policy in place. And remember, when you have a policy, it means this policy will be a policy that will be used every time the issue of reward. And remember, once you have a policy, then that is a rule that you have to follow. Regardless whether the organization is doing good or bad, you need to recognize the efforts of those people. You need to have a process in place so that that process of allocating rewards should not be biased in any way. And that is what the process is going to cater for. Remember, when you don't have a process in place, any Tom, Dick, and Harry will be able to get reward. And that process will be unfair. And some employees might feel that they are not recognized in any way. Then the aim of reward, number one, the aim of reward is to support the achievement of business goal through high performance. So you'll be able to achieve your business goal, and this will have a ripple effect in your performance at the end of the day. Then reward people according to their value they create. Make sure you look at the value of the individual. However, we have some managers who are very toxic managers. As much as you think you're doing the best, they will always try to bring you down. And these are normally managers who have, what do we call them? There's a name we give those managers. They are really very bad, and they will never appreciate you, and they will always think that they are the best. Narcissistic managers, that is the name. We have those managers who are too narcissistic. Even if you suggest something in a meeting, they will always want to bring you down so that you feel that you are not doing your best. And that is their way of their strategy. It is called reverse psychology, where they are using your suggestions to bring you down so that you feel that you don't have value as a person. Remember, every employee has value, and that is why the human resource, the organization through the human resource gave you an opportunity to be in that space. So let nobody try to bring you down because of their what can I say? Because they think that they are the best, yet they are not the best. Then reward people according to what the organization values. So make sure you look at the core values and the values in general. so that you can come up with a good reward structure or policy or process. Align reward practices with employees' needs. So you need to look at the different employees' needs and try to figure out those rewards based on the employees' needs. Then help to attract and retain the high quality people in the organizational needs. Retaining is very important. And that is why you also need people who are experienced, people who have been in that space for a very long time, so that they will always give direction. They will always advise, give technical advice in the event something goes as something goes the way you did not plan for it. So you have people who have been in that space for a very long time. You can also use retired employees who will come act as consultants, and you pay them some amount of money for purposes of trying to educate the others who are there, to give them their experience so that they can start believing in themselves. If you have somebody who has worked for an organization for the last 40 years, and you bring that person on board, who is going to talk to the employees who are there, existing employees, that will really make the employees feel some level of trying to be in that organization for a very long time. It's not a bad thing to be in one organization for a very long time. But if you are growing, yeah, make sure you grow. Don't be in one position for a very long time. It is very demoralizing, and you might end up hating yourself and many other things. Then win the engagement of people. Ensure you incorporate people in your reward system. Incorporate people in your reward system. Very, very important. So you will look at the reward guiding principles. You will go look at the reward guiding principles, and the total reward. So just go and look at it, and we shall look at some issues next week as we go along. So make sure you go and read the remaining part. And in case of any questions, you can always ask. So I will wish to stop there. I can see it's 7:42. Today you came in a bit late, but it's better to be late than never. So these opportunities for questions. These opportunities for questions. So I'll start with